Is Miami's front office too scared to pull the trigger? The Jaelan Phillips trade dilemma that exposes Chris Grier's desperation. What do you do when you have a supremely talented player who can't stay healthy, a locker room that loves him, and a front office that might be too terrified of job security to make the smart long-term decision? Welcome to the Miami Dolphins Jaelan Phillips conundrum, a situation so perfectly encapsulating this franchise's dysfunction that it deserves its own case study in organizational paralysis. With the November 4th trade deadline rapidly approaching, Miami faces a brutal choice. Cash in on Phillips now while his value still exists, or hold on to him through free agency and pray he stays healthy enough to justify the compensatory pick they might receive. And hanging over all of it is the unmistakable stench of a general manager who's coaching for his job and might be too scared to make the bold move his franchise desperately needs. Jaelan Phillips is impossible not to love if you're a Dolphins fan. His energy is absolutely infectious, the kind of player who brings juice to every practice, every game, every team meeting. His attitude is elite, his motor never stops. His relentless pursuit of quarterbacks represents everything you want from an edge rusher in today's NFL. When he's on the field, he's a legitimate difference maker who can wreck opposing game plans and force offenses into uncomfortable situations. The problem, and it's a massive, franchise-altering problem, is that Phillips simply cannot stay healthy. After finishing 2 consecutive seasons on injured reserve, he's become the poster child for unreliability, and that reality is destroying whatever trade value he might have had just 18 months ago. The trade speculation surrounding Phillips has been heating up in recent weeks, with multiple teams desperately searching for edge rushing, help reaching out to gauge Miami's interest in dealing him. The logic is simple. Miami is 1-4 with their season effectively over. Phillips is a pending free agent after this year, and cashing in now makes infinitely more sense than letting him walk for nothing or gambling on a compensatory pick that might never materialize. But here's where things get complicated. The market for Phillips is tepid at best, and the compensation Miami could realistically expect falls far short of what you'd hope to receive for a player of his talent level. The absolute best Miami could hope for right now is a third-round pick, and even that might be optimistic given Phillips' injury history. Teams aren't lining up to trade premium draft capital for a player who spent significant portions of the last 2 seasons injured and has no long-term commitment to their organization. That's the brutal reality of the NFL trade market. Injury-prone pending free agents don't generate bidding wars. They generate lowball offers from teams hoping to exploit a desperate seller. And make no mistake, Miami is absolutely desperate, even if they're not publicly admitting it yet. The compensatory pick calculation makes this decision even more agonizing for Chris Grier and the Dolphins front office. If Phillips walks in free agency and signs a substantial contract elsewhere, Miami would likely receive a third-round compensatory pick in 2027. The same compensation they're being offered right now in trade discussions. So why trade him if you're getting the same return either way? The answer lies in the uncertainty surrounding compensatory picks and the sobering lesson Miami learned from Christian Wilkins. Wilkins left Miami in free agency last year after signing a massive contract with Las Vegas, a deal that should have guaranteed the Dolphins a third-round compensatory pick. But Wilkins suffered a significant injury early in the season, failed to meet the playing time requirements necessary for that compensation level, and Miami's projected third-round pick dropped to a fourth-rounder. That's a crushing blow. The difference between a third and fourth-round pick is substantial, and it happened through no fault of Miami's. They did everything right, let a talented player walk rather than overpaying him, and still got screwed by circumstances beyond their control. That cautionary tale should be driving Miami's thinking on Phillips. There's absolutely no guarantee he stays healthy enough through this season and next to earn that third-round compensatory pick. In fact, given his injury history, it's arguably more likely he gets hurt again and Miami ends up with a fourth-round pick or nothing at all. Trading him now for a guaranteed third-rounder eliminates that uncertainty and ensures Miami gets something tangible for an asset that's walking out the door in 4 months regardless. It's basic risk management. Take the sure thing over to gamble when the downside is potentially getting nothing. But here's where Chris Grier's job security enters the equation and poisons the entire decision-making process. Multiple NFL insiders have noted that Grier's reluctance to become an aggressive seller at the trade deadline might stem from his concerns about employment security. Trading away talent for future draft picks is a calling card of a general manager who's planning for the long term and confident in his position. It's what smart, secure executives do when their team isn't competing. But Grier isn't secure. He's running a franchise that's 1-4, watching his carefully constructed roster crumble, and facing almost certain termination if Miami finishes with another losing record. A general manager coaching for his job doesn't trade productive players for draft picks he might never get to use. He holds onto his talent, prays for a miraculous turnaround, and hopes that somehow squeezing out a few more wins this season buys him another year of job security. That's organizational malpractice, disguised as optimism, and it's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps franchises trapped in mediocrity for decades. If Grier is too scared to make the smart long-term move because he's worried about his job, then he's already failed as a GM and needs to be replaced immediately. The Bradley Chubb situation mirrors Phillips' dilemma almost exactly. Chubb is another talented, injury-prone veteran who could fetch decent compensation in a trade, but who Miami seems reluctant to move. The 49ers' interest in Chubb has been well documented, and a trade sending him to San Francisco for draft capital makes tremendous sense for both sides. But if Grier won't pull the trigger on Chubb or Phillips because he's afraid it signals surrender, then Miami is heading toward the worst possible outcome, losing both players for minimal or no compensation while wasting another season of their competitive window. The fan perspective on Phillips is genuinely heartbreaking because Dolphins fans recognize what they're losing. This isn't some mercenary veteran collecting checks and going through the motions. Phillips is beloved in Miami because his effort and attitude are unimpeachable. He represents everything you want from a professional athlete: maximum effort, elite character, genuine love for the game and his teammates. Trading him feels like betraying that loyalty and sending a message that intangibles don't matter, only production and health do. That's a tough pill for fans to swallow, even when they intellectually understand it's the right business decision. But the NFL is a business, and sentimentality gets franchises killed. The Dallas Cowboys held on to players too long because of emotional attachments and wasted years trying to recapture past glory. The Pittsburgh Steelers have made ruthless decisions about franchise icons and sustained excellence for decades as a result. Miami needs to decide which model they want to emulate: the team that makes hard choices based on cold analysis, or the team that lets feelings cloud judgment and pays the price in lost opportunity. The market for edge rushers is robust right now, which actually works in Miami's favor if they're willing to sell. Multiple contending teams desperately need pass rushing help. San Francisco lost Nick Bosa for the season. Detroit is trying to maintain their surprising success. Baltimore wants to bolster their defense for another playoff run. These teams have draft capital to spend and are willing to pay premiums for players who can help them win now. Phillips and Chubb both fit that profile, even with their injury concerns. The demand exists. Miami just needs to accept that the return won't be what they get if these players had clean medical histories. The November 4th deadline is rapidly approaching, which means Grier has maybe 2 weeks to decide whether he's a seller or a delusional optimist clinging to impossible playoff hopes. Every day that passes without Miami engaging seriously in trade discussions is another day of opportunity cost, another chance for injuries to happen that torpedo any remaining value. The worst outcome would be Miami holding Phillips through the deadline, watching him get hurt again in Week 11, and then getting nothing when he walks in free agency. That's franchise malpractice, and it's exactly what Grier's track record suggests might happen. The fascinating subplot is what this decision reveals about organizational alignment in Miami. If Grier is hesitant to sell but ownership wants to rebuild, that's a fundamental disconnect that needs resolving immediately. If Mike McDaniel wants to hold on to talent for one more desperate push, but the front office knows it's over, that's another fracture in the foundation. Successful franchises have alignment between ownership, front office, and coaching staff about the team's direction.